And let's move on now to the fact that dozens of foster care workers are to take part in a mass lobby at Holyrood later. They're demanding a central register because they say the current system's deeply flawed and contributes to a chronic shortage of people willing to provide homes for children unable to live with their birth families. Jane Wright is a foster carer and chair of the Foster Care Workers Union. Good morning to you.
Morning.
So what are you calling for from the Scottish Government?
What we'd like to see is the introduction of a piece of legislation which would give us a central register. This would work in the same way that the central register that teachers, GPs, doctors, social workers have. We've got no central body that regulates the work that we do.
And so is that the problem then for the system at the moment, as far as you're concerned?
One of the issues is that all 32 Scottish local authorities and approximately 20-odd independent providers provide a fostering service in Scotland. Each one of them organises its own training, its own approvals, its own registrations and deregistrations of carers, which leads to a lot of overlap in the system. Some providers give excellent training to their carers and have very well equipped, well skilled carers. Others it's not so good. And we believe that every child in Scotland who's looked after in foster care deserves to be looked after by somebody who's had the very best training.
And why did you become a foster carer?
For a number of reasons. My birth children were at primary school when I first started, and I'd enjoyed the parenting role. I'd been a health visitor in the past, so I had an interest in child development. And it was suited our family circumstances.
And did you feel you had enough training or enough help with that?
I must admit at the beginning, no, I did feel thrown in at the deep end. We used to foster newborn babies and that was a steep learning curve at the beginning, yes, definitely.
And what's the situation at the moment? It seems like the estimate that at least 580 more foster families are needed in Scotland. Do you think the changes that you would like to see, would that encourage more people to step up here?
I think it would encourage more people to step up, but also quite significantly it would cut down on some of the waste in the current system, because although some areas have got a shortage of foster carers and are desperately looking for more people, there's also a lot of carers who don't have children in placement with them at the moment and don't have children staying with them. And that's very frustrating for them, especially when people have given up a job to be available.
And is that down to the inefficiencies of the system?
It's partly because when you're approved as a foster carer, you're approved for the particular agency or local authority who've assessed you. And if they don't have a need to use you, to move to another area to work for somewhere that does need you would involve resigning, being completely retrained and being completely reassessed. So that process takes a minimum of 6 months. So that's at least 6 months where you're not going to be working.
And what about the fact that this is it treated properly as a job, and particularly regarding this financial support that carers get? Do you think is that good enough?
Well, there's two elements to the support you get. One is an allowance that used to look after children. A recent survey by the Fostering Network suggested that a high percentage of carers didn't feel that covered their costs. The other part of it is a fee, which is to compensate for your time. That's certainly not anything near a wage in terms of a full-time job. And
are these things that really the government ought to be looking at as well, do you think?
I think one of the issues at the moment is that the funding of foster care is caught in a bit of a no man's land between local authority funding and central government funding. So I would like to see a commitment from central government to fund a national minimum allowance in Scotland. That's something we don't have at the moment. But importantly, I think we need legislation to regulate what foster carers do in every area of the country, which would give a much better oversight of the workforce that we have.
And that's the most important thing for you then.
Yes, definitely.
Thanks very much indeed for joining us this morning. Jane Wright there, a foster carer and chair of the Foster Care Workers Union. Many thanks. Coming up to